Order! Order in the court!
The judge's voice cuts through the chaos. But 10-year-old Maya stands firm at the defense table, her small hands gripping a folder thick with evidence that would shatter everything. Your Honor, her voice rings clear despite her age. I move to dismiss all charges against my father based on prosecutorial misconduct and fabricated evidence. The courtroom erupts. Gasps echo through the gallery. The prosecutor's face drains of color. Because a child, a brilliant, determined black child, was about to expose the corruption that had nearly stolen her father's life. 3 years earlier, Maya's world collapsed in a single night. Her father, Marcus, a respected mechanic in their small Georgia town, was dragged from their home in handcuffs. The charge? First-degree murder of a local shop owner during what police claimed was a robbery gone wrong. The evidence seemed overwhelming. A witness placed Marcus at the scene. His fingerprints were on the murder weapon. Security footage showed someone matching his description fleeing the area. Within months, Marcus sat on death row, abandoned by an overworked public defender and failed by a system that had already decided his fate. But Maya refused to accept it. While other children played with dolls, she pored over legal documents. While they watched cartoons, she studied case law in the town library. Her mother worked double shifts to pay for appeal attempts, but every lawyer they contacted wanted fees they couldn't afford. So Maya made a decision that would change everything. She would become her father's lawyer. You might ask yourself, how does a 10-year-old even begin to understand the legal system? How do you fight when everyone tells you you're too young, too small, too naive? Maya started with the basics. She convinced the town librarian, Mrs. Johnson, to help her access legal databases. She wrote letters to law schools, asking professors to explain concepts she couldn't grasp. She even managed to get visitor privileges to see her father every week. But the obstacles were crushing. The prison guards mocked her. Little girl playing lawyer. They'd sneer as she carried her notebooks past the metal detectors. Fellow inmates warned Marcus, "Don't let that child give you false hope, brother. The system don't care about our baby's dreams." Maya's own mother begged her to stop. "Baby, you're carrying weight no child should carry. Let the adults handle this." But Maya had noticed something the adults missed. Something in the police reports that didn't add up. The witness testimony had inconsistencies. The timeline was wrong. The forensic evidence raised questions nobody had bothered to ask. And then she discovered the smoking gun. What happened next will leave you stunned. But before we get there, make sure you subscribe to Black Nation, so you never miss stories that shake the soul. Late one night, while reading through evidence files for the 100th time, Maya found it. A receipt, barely visible in the police photographs, crumpled in the corner of the crime scene. The timestamp showed a purchase made 20 minutes after the murder occurred, from a store 15 miles away. The receipt was in the real killer's name. But here's where the story gets darker. Maya discovered that Detective Stevens, the lead investigator, was the real killer's cousin. The witness who identified Marcus? Stevens' gambling buddy who owed him money. The fingerprints on the murder weapon? Planted evidence from a coffee cup Marcus had used during questioning. This wasn't just negligence. This was a conspiracy. Maya now had a choice. She could take this evidence to another lawyer and hope they'd believe her. Or she could do something unprecedented. She could represent her father herself. In most states, this would be impossible. But Georgia law had an obscure provision allowing family members to represent defendants in capital cases if the defendant specifically requested it and waived his right to counsel. Marcus was hesitant. "Maya, baby, I won't let you sacrifice your childhood for this. What if you fail? What if they come after you too?" But Maya's resolve was unshakable. "Daddy, they already took 3 years of our lives. They're not getting one more day. Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have trusted a 10-year-old with your life?" Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to know what you're thinking. Maya had 6 weeks to prepare for the hearing. 6 weeks to master criminal law, evidence rules, and courtroom procedure. 6 weeks to build a defense that seasoned attorneys wouldn't attempt without months of preparation. She transformed her bedroom into a war room. Legal books stacked floor to ceiling. Evidence photos covered every wall. She practiced opening statements in front of her mirror, perfecting every gesture, every inflection. Mrs. Johnson helped her understand complex legal precedents. A retired judge, Judge Williams, heard about Maya's case and began mentoring her in secret, teaching her courtroom strategy and procedure. But the opposition was preparing too. District Attorney Reynolds had built his career on high-profile convictions. He wasn't about to let a child make him look foolish. He assigned his top prosecutor to the case and hired private investigators to discredit Maya's evidence. Anonymous threats started appearing in Maya's mailbox. Someone slashed her mother's car tires. Detective Stevens began following Maya to school. The message was clear: back down or face the consequences. But Maya pressed forward because she knew something they didn't. She knew her father was innocent, and she had the proof to prove it. The hearing day arrived like a storm. Media surrounded the courthouse. Child lawyer attempts impossible defense read the headlines. Most expected Maya to crumble under pressure, to provide entertainment value before the inevitable conviction was upheld. They underestimated her completely. Maya entered that courtroom dressed in her Sunday best, carrying a briefcase that weighed almost as much as she did. Her father looked at her with a mixture of pride and terror. Her mother clutched her rosary in the gallery. Prosecutor Davis opened with confidence. He methodically presented the state's case: the witness testimony, the fingerprints, the security footage. To anyone watching, Marcus looked guilty beyond reasonable doubt. Then Maya stood up. "Your Honor, everything you just heard was a lie." The courtroom fell silent. This tiny figure, barely visible behind the podium, commanded absolute attention. "I'm going to prove to you that Detective Stevens fabricated evidence, coerced witness testimony, and framed my father to protect the real killer, his own cousin." For the next 4 hours, Maya systematically destroyed the prosecution's case. She presented the receipt evidence, proving the real killer was elsewhere during Marcus's supposed crime. She showed how the witness testimony contained impossible details that could only have come from police coaching. She demonstrated how the fingerprint evidence had been contaminated during questioning. But her masterstroke came when she called Detective Stevens to the stand. Legacies like this deserve to be remembered. Subscribe to Black Nation, and let's keep these stories alive together. "Detective Stevens," Maya began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You testified that you found my father's fingerprints on the murder weapon during your initial search. Is that correct?" "Yes, that's correct." Maya walked to the evidence table and picked up a photograph. "This is a picture of the crime scene taken by your own photographers. Do you see the murder weapon in this photo?" Stevens squinted at the image. "No, but that's because it wasn't there, was it? Because you didn't plan it until after you brought my father in for questioning and got his fingerprints on that coffee cup." The courtroom began to buzz. Stevens' face flushed red. "That's ridiculous. I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Maya produced another document. "This is a phone record showing 17 calls between you and your cousin James in the week before the murder. The same cousin who's currently serving time for armed robbery in Florida. The same cousin whose receipt I found at the crime scene." Prosecutor Davis jumped up. "Objection. This is pure speculation." "Overruled," the judge said, leaning forward with interest. "Continue, Miss Maya." Maya turned back to Stevens. "Detective, would you like to explain why you never investigated James despite multiple witnesses placing him in town that week? Why you never checked his alibi? Why you destroyed security footage from the gas station where this receipt was found?" Stevens was sweating now. I followed proper procedure." "No, you didn't." Maya's voice grew stronger. "You framed an innocent man to protect your criminal cousin. And when that wasn't enough, you planted evidence, coerced testimony, and nearly sent my father to death row for a crime you knew he didn't commit." The courtroom erupted. Stevens bolted for the door, but court officers blocked his exit. What would you have done if you were in that courtroom? Would you have believed a 10-year-old's word against a decorated detective? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective matters. But Maya wasn't finished. She had one more bombshell. "Your Honor, I have evidence that this conspiracy goes deeper than one corrupt detective." She presented financial records showing payments from a local crime syndicate to Stevens, payments that coincided with several unsolved cases where key evidence mysteriously disappeared. The real reason Marcus was framed? He had accidentally witnessed James Stevens fleeing the murder scene, and the syndicate couldn't risk him remembering details that might lead to their operation being exposed. Maya revealed that the shop owner who was murdered had been refusing to launder money for the syndicate. His death was a message. Marcus was just an unlucky witness who fit the profile they needed for a scapegoat. "This isn't just about my father," Maya declared. "This is about a pattern of corruption that has denied justice to our entire community." Judge Harrison, visibly shaken, ordered an immediate investigation. Within hours, Stevens was arrested. The witness who identified Marcus broke down and confessed to lying under pressure. The charges against Marcus were dismissed. After 3 years on death row, Marcus walked free, his daughter by his side, vindicated by the child who refused to let injustice win. Maya's victory sent shockwaves far beyond that Georgia courtroom. Stevens' arrest led to a federal investigation that exposed the crime syndicate's operations. 7 more wrongful convictions were overturned. District Attorney Reynolds resigned in disgrace. Maya became the youngest person ever to successfully defend a capital case. Law schools invited her to speak. Civil rights organizations honored her courage. But the real change was deeper than headlines and awards. Maya's case sparked nationwide conversations about wrongful convictions, prosecutorial misconduct, and systemic racism in the justice system. Her father's exoneration became a catalyst for criminal justice reform in Georgia. Marcus returned to his life a changed man. The years on death row had aged him, but watching his daughter's courage had restored his faith in justice. He opened a legal aid center, helping other families navigate the system that had nearly destroyed his own. Maya's mother, who had worked herself to exhaustion during those 3 years, finally allowed herself to breathe. She watched her daughter continue her legal studies with a mixture of pride and amazement. And Maya? She never stopped fighting. This was only the beginning. And trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Hit that subscribe button to stay with us till the end. Here's what makes Maya's story so powerful. It reveals how many others are still trapped by the same system she defeated. Every year, hundreds of innocent people sit on death row, failed by overworked public defenders, buried by prosecutorial ambition, forgotten by a society that's moved on to the next headline. How many don't have a Maya fighting for them? Maya's case exposed uncomfortable truths about American justice. How evidence can be manufactured, how witnesses can be coerced, how corruption can masquerade as law enforcement. But it also revealed something else: the power of one person who refuses to accept injustice. Think about that 10-year-old girl, surrounded by adults who told her to give up, to accept defeat, to let the system run its course. She could have listened. She could have resigned herself to visiting her father through prison glass for the rest of his life. Instead, she chose to fight. Maya's story teaches us that justice isn't automatic. It's not something that happens to us. It's something we must create, sometimes one case at a time, one person at a time, one impossible fight at a time. Years later, Maya graduated from law school at 16, becoming one of the youngest attorneys in American history. She specializes in wrongful conviction cases, carrying forward the work that began in her childhood. Her father's case remains her most famous victory, but not her only one. She's now freed dozens of innocent people, each case building on the foundation she laid in that Georgia courthouse. But Maya will tell you that the real victory wasn't legal. It was personal. It was proving that a black child could stand up to a corrupt system and win. It was showing that justice isn't just for those who can afford it. It was demonstrating that sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the most powerful truth. Maya's story should inspire us, but it should also challenge us. Because while we celebrate her extraordinary courage, we must remember that she shouldn't have had to fight alone. A 10-year-old child should never have to become her father's lawyer because the system failed him so completely. How many Mayas are out there right now, trying to save their loved ones from wrongful convictions? How many families are being destroyed by the same corruption that nearly took Marcus's life? Maya won because she had exceptional intelligence, incredible determination, and just enough help from people who believed in her. But what about those who don't have all three? Her victory exposes the system's vulnerability to one brilliant, persistent challenge. But it also reveals how many people are failed by that same system every single day. We tell our stories for us by us. Subscribe to Black Nation, join the community, and let's make sure these voices are never silenced. When Maya walked out of that courthouse with her father, she carried more than legal documents. She carried proof that the impossible becomes possible when someone refuses to accept defeat. She showed us that age doesn't determine wisdom, that size doesn't determine strength, that a child's moral clarity can cut through adult corruption like light through darkness. Marcus's freedom was just the beginning. Maya's true legacy lies in every person inspired by her story, every injustice challenged because someone remembered what a 10-year-old accomplished when everyone told her to give up. The next time you hear about a wrongful conviction, remember Maya. The The next time someone tells you that fighting the system is pointless, remember how a child dismantled a conspiracy that defeated seasoned attorneys. Remember that justice isn't a guarantee, it's a choice. And sometimes it takes a child to remind adults what's worth fighting for. Maya proved that in America, even a 10-year-old black girl can stand up in court and speak truth to power. She proved that love and determination can overcome corruption and prejudice. She proved that justice delayed is not always justice denied. Sometimes it's justice waiting for the right person to demand it. And in a system that often fails our community, Maya reminded us that we don't have to accept failure. We can fight back. We can win. We can save each other. That's the legacy of the child who broke the system. That's the power of refusing to let injustice have the final word. That's what happens when a little girl decides her father's life is worth everything she has to give. Justice. Hard fought, hard won, and absolutely worth the fight. Remember Maya's story. Share Maya's story. Because stories like this change the world, one heart at a time.